Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living in beautiful Palm Springs, California. I'm so glad you can join me this morning. I'm Reverend Rebecca Kay. Well, it's Wednesday, the middle of the week, and I always feel like it's time for us to have some spiritual points to ponder. So this morning, our reading is by Mark Nepo from his book of Awakening, and it is entitled Emotional Weather and Self-Confidence. Mark begins with a quote. "It may have nothing to do with me, but if a friend or loved one is sad or angry, I can secretly wonder, what did I do? What can I do? And why didn't I do it better to begin with?" He goes on to write, "I'm often surprised and humbled by how quickly, in my insecurity, I can begin to assume responsibility for all the wrongs and suffering I see around me. When thrown off center, when old patterns return, when feeling exhausted or depressed, I so quickly become the exaggerated cause of all that's not right with the world. I know I'm not alone in this. Perhaps it's one of the laws of emotional weather. Sudden lows resulting in isolated storms. It's happened to me enough times over the years that I have to acknowledge the power of negative self-centeredness. We typically think of the ego-centered as being conceited and self-inflated and quite selfish. But this reoccurring struggle with exaggerated responsibility has made me realize the more often we are ego-centered, it's when we're feeling deflated, when we're feeling shaken from our sense of oneness with things. In that place of separation, we become darkly self-centered, blaming ourselves for not fixing things or making things right or for letting bad things happen. Underneath these self-incriminations is the grandiose assumption that we have the power in the first place to control events that are really beyond any human being's influence. Certainly, we affect each other, and often. But to assume that other people's inner moods hinge on my presence is an egocentric way to keep myself in a cycle of sacrifice and guilt. Further, to assume that another's condition or way of being in the world hinges on my presence is the beginning of self-oppression and codependency. In extreme moments of negative self-centeredness, we can even assume magical proportions of the burden, in which we feel acutely responsible for a loved one's illness or misfortune because we weren't good enough, there enough, or perfect enough. It is helpful to note here that the psychologist Michael Mahoney defines self-confidence based on the Latin word confere, fidelity, and understands self-confidence is a fidelity to the self. Indeed, it is only a devotion to that sacred bottom beneath our moods of insecurity that brings us back in accord with the center of the heart, which shares the same center with all beings. This is what the Hindu tradition calls Atman, the shared immortal self. So now, when I trip into moments of low self-esteem and feel certain that I am the cause of all this bad weather, I try to feel the pace of the earth turning beneath my feet and the pace of the clouds drifting over my head and the pace of my heart opening after a lifetime of pain. When these align, I am weakened of my ordinary will and awakened into a power greater than any one heart, greater than the weather on any one day or the mood of any one life. And so this morning, as we go into our meditation, I invite you to ponder, what is your emotional weather? And what is it telling you about your self-confidence? So I invite you to just take that deep breath in. Let it out with a sigh. Just release all that stuff that was going on before you got here this morning and all that stuff that's going on after. Just sink into what's beneath you. That bed, that chair, that sofa. Just let it really support you. Feel yourself surrounded in love. Feel yourself connected to the divine as we step into this place of high consciousness, the place where we prepare our minds for the best that life has to offer. And now I ask you to notice your heart. Feel it filled with love. And just know that you are connected to the heart of the divine. And just sit in this love and heart space and allow it to fill you up as the silence takes you deeper. What is your emotional weather telling you about your self-confidence? What is your emotional weather telling you about your self-confidence? And now I ask you to allow the love from the center of the heart of all beings to fill you on all levels. And allow your emotional weather to become one of sunshine, of joy, of laughter, of peace. And so, as our journey comes to a close, we send great thanks to the universe for the opportunity to stop and feel the earth turning beneath our feet, to feel the clouds drifting above our head, to take an opportunity to open our hearts to the hearts of all, to feel the oneness with the world, and to clear our emotional weather, to know that ours is a life of sunshine. I am so grateful that you've started your day with a daily spiritual practice with me. I'm Reverend Rebecca Kay here at the Center for Spiritual Living in beautiful Palm Springs, California. I thank you for being a light in the world. I thank you for being conscious of who and what you are and how you serve. I invite you to join me on Friday for our word for the week. And I remind you, if you'd like to hear this again, it's on our Facebook Live page. And after the next few days, you can always find it on Daily Spiritual Practices with Rev Rebecca Kay on my YouTube page. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I send you much love and many blessings. See you Friday.